evening, Bethlehem. Good evening, everyone. Who are we? We are women who are brown and black and ivory and tan and light, and we are powerful. We're not powerful. We're in control. We're not in control. We're sad and we're timid and we're shy and we're often afraid. Domestic violence occurs. A lot of different things happens with it. Number one, state of South Carolina is the worst state for men killing women. The worst state in the country. And so one of the things we have to remember is that's why we want to educate our community about that today. Every 9 seconds, a woman is hurt or killed by someone she loves. Today, our panel is going to share information with you and how important domestic violence and how it affects our families, our sister, our mother, our friend, our cousin, our aunt, but it also affects men. We want to know that more than 1 in 4 women reporting has been victimized by a form of abuse. Today, I want to introduce, I myself is Angela Gaines. I'm a counselor and therapist here in the upstate, and I want to introduce my panel, and I will introduce them one by one, and they will share information with you in regards to domestic violence. Our first person we would definitely want to introduce to you will be Shawnee Peoples. She, of course, is going to represent the Greenville County Police Department. She will share with us her role, and she will share with us what in regards to how they work with victims of domestic violence.
I work at the Sheriff's Office, and I've been there for 14 years. I know for some people I've tried to keep quiet where I work, but I guess I'm exposed. The thing about the job and what we do, I know there's a lot of criticism, but what we try to do is to help each and every victim when they contact us. A lot of times there are a lot of victims who do not contact the Sheriff's Office or any kind of law enforcement when they're in crisis. Basically, I have a video that we're going to show that's really kind of shows the process from beginning to end and the other agencies that we've worked with to get a good conclusion to the problem.
And we will have questions for Shawnee at the end, so we just want to go ahead and move on to our next panel. We have Bagia Eddy. She is from Edie. She is a survivor, domestic violence survivor, and she's going to speak about her survival story real quickly and also a little bit about her organization in Greenville.
Thank you. I am Bagia Eddy from Greenville, South Carolina, CEO of Save.org. Our organization helps women who are victims of domestic violence as well as dating abuse, because for me it started in high school. I had a high school sweetheart who literally jumped on me every day after every football game, basketball game. But we were young. We were 16 and 17. I didn't see it growing up, so hey, it could be normal. He brought me shoes to make up for it. It was okay. Left him, went off to college, and literally met the man who I thought that I would marry. And it wasn't until 2 years in that I was laying in a hospital in Cabarrus County in North Carolina, University Center, where he almost took my life. All I remember was one night being drugged out of my dorm room. I was beaten in the middle of the street. People stood around and watched. His friends watched. And the next morning, I know a day and a half later, I woke up to a nurse telling me, "Look at your face." I called my parents, and thank God, my parents are the type who never knew, but they came and got me with no questions asked, and I literally left in a hospital gown. So there is help. It's something that you don't want to remain silent about. I was young then. I was 20, and thank God I lived to be 37, but it was only by the grace of God, because had that not happened, I wouldn't have left, and I know that personally. So it took me seeing myself where I was to really decide that now was the time to get out. So it can happen to anyone. Women die every day in the state of South Carolina alone at the hands of someone they love. So it's very, very real. Thank you.
Thank you, Bagia. And one of the things we want to let you know is domestic violence is the leading cause of injury to women as well. When you talk about it, it is much more higher for mugging, more than stranger rape, more than a car accident. Women are getting damaged and women are being abused every day. So we now going to go on to our next panelist, is Jim Rosenberg. And Jim and I have worked together in the community for a number of years, but he works in Anderson County, and he works with the male perpetrators. So I want you to share a little bit, Jim, about that for us.
Yes, my name's Jim Rosenberger, and I work at the Family Counseling Center in Anderson. and have off and on for about 15 years. I did take a 4-year break. Before that, I worked at several DSS offices in Child Protective Services. That's where I got to know Angela. And the two jobs are very closely related. She mentioned that South Carolina leads the nation in homicides by domestic violence. Well, Anderson County leads South Carolina, all the counties with domestic violence. We have a tremendous amount of violence and our propensity towards violence all the time in Anderson, in Greenville counties, and in South Carolina. But one of the things I noticed when I took over our domestic violence program, it's called STEER, Striving to End Abusive Relationships. It was a feel-good program, which is sad to say in what we're dealing with, but we had about 30 guys and about 6 women coming in different groups. We do not allow the men and women to be in groups. And I realized that this is such a big problem. You heard the stats she gave you, and it's not even close to the number of people we should be seeing. So I went back to DSS and talked to them. I went to some of the judges and probation and then eventually churches and realized this is not a agency problem. This is a community problem. And in 7 years' time, just to show you the number of people we were affecting, 7 years' time, we went to 180 people a week coming to groups. And it got so large that we were doing 2 groups every night of the week, and then Saturdays we have a couple groups also. And since it slowed down, I left and I'm back down there, and I still only do the Saturday morning groups. Every Saturday morning, I have about 30 guys come in, and then we start working with them on the things that you heard in this video. Most of every guy that walked in my office, his first statement is, if she hadn't have done this, I wouldn't be here. And it's tough to break through that denial, that minimization. And if she hadn't have bought this, if she hadn't have talked to her mom, if she hadn't have anything, and for whatever reason, they're not willing to take responsibility of it. And of course, if they were, they wouldn't be there to begin with. So it takes a little while to break through. The state mandates that it's a 26-week program, so we have them 26 weeks. Fully 1/2 of every guy that is referred to us by a judge, by a probation officer, by PTI, by DSS, quits or gets evicted from our program. We're not shy about doing that. We believe that they have to take responsibility. If they don't, we don't want to sign off that they've completed a program. We don't want to put them back on the street saying they're okay and make promises to their loved ones, to their girlfriends or wives, saying they're okay and they're not okay. I'm a little rough with the guys. I do push them pretty hard. I want them taking responsibility. But we don't get to see that responsibility for about 6 to 7 weeks. We start to see some movement. If they can make it with me for 6 weeks, and typically they do okay. And the 6th week to about the 15th week that we start teaching them, how do you even communicate with somebody that's not going to lead to somebody screaming and holes in the walls and breaking things and certainly ultimately weapons, knives and guns and things like that. We even get people trying to run over each other in cars. It's such a volatile situation. And obviously the piece that I work real closely with is DSS. The children get in the middle of it. It's surprising how many children get damaged by this type of behavior. Even if it's not physical damage, there can be some emotional damage. Kids don't know what's going on when they just hear the screaming and stuff behind the doors. They don't know what to react. They don't know if mom's going to be alive or not. And the unfortunate part is we get to deal with some of the kids that have lost their parents with it. About the 20th week they come through us, we start working on.
Pick the microphone up for us. Take it out. There you go.
Am I not loud enough? Okay. At about the 20th week, we start working on teaching them how to buy the group so much that they're giving it back to the new members. We have new guys coming in all the time. It's a rotating group. So there's new ones starting. Each week there's new guys starting. And each week a new one comes in and saying, if she hadn't have done this. Now in our program, and most of the programs like mine across the state, we do not get the most violent of the guys. They have a group down in Columbia. Typically it's at Broad River Prison or something. We get the guys that this may be bad to say it this way, but they didn't do anything terrible. They did something stupid. Typically, you get people that we get them that are pushing each other. We don't get them that do the great bodily injury. We typically get the ones that are just, they don't know how to communicate, and the movie said, the video showed them, and control is such an issue that if I can't reason with you, I'm going to yell at you. If I can't get you to do what I want when I'm yelling at you, I'm going to scream at you. If I can't get you to do what I want when I scream at you, I'm going to curse at you. If I can't get you to do what I want then, I'm going to break something. And then if I can't get you to do what I want then I'm going to take it to another level. And that's the nature of domestic violence with men. And the reason why there are so many more perpetrators of violence that are men is men have a far larger capacity to do damage than women do. I don't mean to look that, but the size difference over here is just a little bit different, and men are typically quicker to go to weapons than women are, and that's kind of what we do in Anderson County. It's a growing problem. I believe the churches should help us a little bit more, and hopefully we'll be doing some of that soon in Anderson.
Yes, thank you, Jim. Because one of the things with Jim talking about with children of abused mothers are 6 times more likely to attempt suicide and 50% more likely to abuse alcohol and other drugs as well. Children witness it every single day. I witness it every single day. And along with Jim and I used to work with DSS together, and we work with those families in the home. So it is a growing problem, very much so. My next panel I want to introduce is Carrie Petty. She is from Safe Harbor right here in Greenville and also in Anderson County, Safe Harbor. She's going to tell you a little bit about Safe Harbor and what she does there, what they do there.
Like Angela said, I'm Carrie Petty with Safe Harbor. I've been with Safe Harbor for 11 years, just a couple of weeks ago. We are located in Greenville, but we also have locations in Anderson and Oconee counties. We have 3 shelters in Greenville, Anderson, and Oconee counties. We also do provide services to Pickens counties as well. I think most people know us for our emergency safe shelter. All of our locations are confidential. They're not huge, but we have capacity for about 65 people between our 3 shelters. We, of course, prefer to serve a person in the county of where they prefer to be. A lot of people don't want to move away from home, which is completely understandable. However, today I happen to do 3 shelter intakes on the crisis line, and all of our shelters are full except for Oconee. So we certainly want to get them to a safe place, even if it's not their first choice. When someone comes into shelter, they are immediately given their basic needs. If they have to flee in the middle of the night and they don't have anything, we have underwear, we have toiletries, we have blankets, we have washcloths, we have food, we have hopefully some comfort in our different shelters to be able to get them settled and at peace very quickly. They also are going to have services with a family advocate, and that advocate is there to help them just figure out the nuts and bolts for their next move. A lot of people think when you come into shelter, it's a time to do a lot of counseling, and we certainly offer counseling to anybody who is in our shelters. But what we find is it's a hierarchy of needs. If you don't know where you're going to be living or where your kids are going to be living or how you're going to put food on the table in the 2 months that you have at shelter, then that's a lot of where the focus is. So our family advocates are trained to work with other community resources to get them hooked up with education, with jobs, with DSS if they need financial assistance, all of the things that they need to be able to have an independent life when they exit our shelter. It is our firm belief that safety does not necessarily lead to independence, but rather independence can lead to safety. So we do have a lot of focus on that concept in all of our services, especially in our shelter services. In addition, we also have counseling that I talked about, and that's what I've done the whole time I've been at Safe Harbor. We call it community counseling, and it is like a traditional therapy office. All of our counselors are also trained in advocacy, and what that means is, when you have a traditional private therapist, you go, you talk about stuff for an hour, you leave, you come back in a couple of weeks. We certainly do that, but our clients have a lot of other needs that come along with that are unique to domestic violence, such as they may have a partner who's going through batterers intervention, and they may want to communicate something to that batterers intervention program. They may have a criminal case with the sheriff's department or with the solicitor's office. They may have a DSS case, and sometimes they don't have the confidence, or sometimes they just don't have the knowledge to be able to communicate with these agencies, or they just need the moral support whenever they go to meetings or to court or anything like that. So all of our counselors are able to provide that kind of advocacy. We go to court with clients. We go to meetings at DSS. We facilitate conversations with people maybe they're having a hard time communicating with. I know we work pretty closely, especially with the solicitor's office, which you saw in the video. And one of the things that we do with them is sometimes the clients are able to tell us things in a safe environment that they're not necessarily able to communicate to law enforcement for a lot of reasons, for fear, for discomfort, for being in shock, for that person's an authority figure. You know, our offices are very cozy with overstuffed chairs. It's a lot easier to tell somebody something. So sometimes they would prefer us to communicate some of those more sensitive details to any kind of authority figure, any kind of agency figure, and we can help them with that. We also have a transitional housing program, and that's a longer-term program. So it's anybody who is homeless due to domestic violence. Predominantly, the clients in that program come from our existing clients of counseling and shelter. However, we do accept anybody from the community who is searching. Right now, we don't have any openings, but if y'all ever did have anybody in need, certainly send them our way so we can get them more information. But that program, again, focuses on giving them, equipping them both financially to support them in living stably and independently, but also giving them all the tools and resources that they're going to need to continue that independence after the program is over. And it's about an 18-month program with 6 months of follow-up. So it's almost a 2-year program of wraparound services. We also have prevention. I know that you mentioned the dating violence, which is so incredibly pervasive. In fact, I think that the numbers are even more staggering for dating violence than they are for abuse in adult relationships. And one thing that's very interesting, too, is that with teens, you see, with adults, it's more. There are certainly males who are victims of domestic violence, and there are females who are perpetrators. But as adults, you see that the vast majority of perpetrators are male and the vast majority of victims are women. But with teens, you see it's a little more equal, that there tends to be a little more even out between who is the victim and who is the perpetrator. And we believe very strongly that prevention at an early age is essential to building healthy adults. So we have a program called REP, which is the Relationship Education Program. And our REP educators go into middle schools and high schools, and they can do either a one-time class. There's a REP 5, which is 5 sessions, and there's a REP 8 or 9, where they can actually be like in a freshman success class for 8 or 9 sessions. We are in pretty much every high school in the 4 counties that we serve, and we're starting to get into more middle schools. They don't just focus on teen dating violence, don't do this, this is bad. They really talk a lot about healthy relationships. We kind of assume that our kids are just going to know how to be in a healthy relationship, but if we don't teach them how to, they're not. So that's part of our prevention services as well. And I think my time's up, so I think I covered everything.
And Carrie covered exactly what I was going to ask her a question about, because a lot of times we think it's just the adults, but right now has been an increase in our young adolescents, and that's why they decided to put it into the schools, into the high schools, because they're seeing an increase in that. One of the things I love that Governor Haley has done, she has developed a task force so that more of the community can get involved, not just from the agencies, but from churches, from our police department. They want everybody to come together to work on this issue. Because a lot of times they think violence is just hitting, but it's psychological, it's yelling, it's mental ability, it's the verbal abuse, it's also domestic violence. And when you think about violence as a learned behavior, but domestic violence does not come because of alcohol and drug use. It doesn't come because of genetics. It is a learned behavior. So it's learned at in our homes at the beginning. And a lot of times that's where it is. We're going to have a few minutes of questions and answers real quickly. And if anyone have any questions, please, you can ask some questions at this time. Shouldn't have any of our panel. Do you all, the panel, have anything that you want to share real quickly before we? You got one? Okay.
Any particular reason why South Carolina leads the nation? I mean, we're not necessarily the poorest state. We're a poor state, but there's always Mississippi. We're not necessarily, there are a lot of variables that we're not the bottom of. So why is it that we end up, do you think, having more homicides per capita than a lot of other places that might be similar to us culturally and demographics?
That's a great question, and it's one that we've been getting a lot since we've come out again as number 1. What's interesting about the statistic is that we happen to be number 1 for the most recent numbers, which are actually from 2013, but we've been in the top 5, and in fact, we've been in the top 2 for years. This is not new. We've been up here for a long time. I think it's not one thing. It's a lot of things. I think the laws that have been existing, and we actually just had a change in our laws. They have gotten a lot better. And if you want to know the specifics about laws, I'm going to refer you to Shauna on that. But there was not a lot of accountability. The way it was before is if you did it once and you got convicted, that was the first offense, which was a misdemeanor. If you did it twice and you got convicted, that was the second offense. It was still a misdemeanor. If you did it 3 times and you got convicted 3 times, then it was finally a felony. There was not a lot of deterrent. The analogy that I use is if I speed past a cop on my way to work every morning, he might pull me over and give me a warning, but if he never gives me a ticket, or if the ticket's only $20, am I going to slow down? Probably not. There has to be a deterrent to stop the behavior. There also has to be conversations like this. I think this is so important and vital. This has always been something, and especially I think in some Southern cultures, is you don't put your business out for anybody to talk about. It's something that's very private. It's something that you don't talk to people about. And there's a lot of shame associated for people who are experiencing domestic violence. There's also the idea that, especially when it's happening in a marriage, is that you know, a lot of people, because of religious reasons, don't believe in divorce. One of the things that we always do at Safe Harbor is we have a lot of people, either people in churches who are calling on behalf of their parishioners, or people themselves who are like, I'm never getting divorced. Are you going to help me? We help anybody. Our goal is not to get you divorced or to get you away from your partner. Our goal is to help you get safe and to give you a place to talk about what's going on. So I have a client who is very devoutly religious. She will never get divorced, but she also got to a point where she said, I can't live with this person if you're going to jeopardize our children and my safety. So she has a lot of boundaries in place. They don't live together. She has a lot of things that he can do if he wants to, rebuild their marriage, but by giving him that responsibility in a healthy way, she's able to stay true to her faith, but still keep her and her family safe. So I think that's unusual, though. The fact that you guys are bringing people into this church means that you care about the subject and that you're willing to talk about it, and I think that is a huge step forward and so very important. I also want to refer you, there's an article from the Post and Courier called Till Death Do Us Part. They actually won a Pulitzer Prize, I believe, for it. It was like a 7-part series, and it goes into great detail on all the different factors that come into what makes us the most dangerous state for women in the U.S. as well.
One of the interesting things that I want to ask Vijaya, because she started as dating. So what were some of the signs? Because some of the people might not know, what are some of the signs that you've seen beforehand?
So there were no signs I saw beforehand. I was really head over heels. The signs that I saw while I was in was the separation from family. Because granted, I was in high school, so I still went home to my parents' house every night. But even as I got into college and it escalated to us living together and living outside of a dorm, control of money, control of who I could talk to, not so much control over what I wore, but more or less isolated me from friends, from those who would have given me help had they knew, and then playing a lot of mind games to where it dealt with the self-esteem issues. It dealt with depression and just keeping you isolated. So before going in, maybe had he cussed me out a lot or fussed a lot, yeah, those would have been clear red signs. But most men trying to talk to you, I mean, it was great going in.
And so that's some of the signs I was going to tell you real quickly before we end. Some of the quick signs you want to note is controlling, being manipulative. You don't get to go anywhere outside the home. It's my way or not your way. Use force or verbally abusive. You walk on eggshells when you're in your household. They violate what you want to say. You cannot say anything. They isolate you from family and friends. It's just a little different control type method of what happens in the relationship. One of the things we got to remember is children are definitely effective and they take on to this, but the victim is responsible for the change, and it's not an easy change for them to do. The victims are responsible for that. In individual counseling, one of the things that Jim pointed on real quick is also when we say marriage counseling, when you see he counsels the men, but also there's a different group for the women. You have to have them separately, right, Jim? They have to be separate. And so if there is a marriage and that is going on, it's better to have individual counseling and not just have the same marriage therapy. So you definitely want to make sure you want to keep that in mind. And a plan of action. It needs to be a plan of action as well. So, Carrie, I know you're going to talk about that real quick. What is the plan of action if someone who knows that they are now being abused and they want to get out?
I would recommend calling either the National Domestic Violence Hotline, or you could call Safe Harbor Hotline and just request that somebody talk to you about a safety plan. We have some general safety tips, and I think they actually talked about some in the video from the solicitor's office. But the things that we talk about is to tell someone, preferably if you're able to call 911. We recognize that sometimes that's not safe in the moment. We get that feedback a lot from victims. Sometimes they need to get to a safe place first, or they need to let it die down before they're able to safely call law enforcement. So we talk to them about codes. So maybe if you call your mom and you say, hey, I can't make lunch tomorrow, and if your mom knows that y'all don't have lunch plans and you say that, then your mom's going to call the police to come to your house. We also, again, recommend, it said to stay away from kitchens and bathrooms, but the reason why is that there are a lot of weapons in the kitchen. A perpetrator might not be intending to use a weapon. It's not like they're going to get their gun or they're going to get a knife specifically, but if there is an altercation in the kitchen and it escalates, then they could reach for a knife, which would be handily available. In bathrooms, I actually had a client this happened to. Even if it's just a shove, which is not to minimize the shove, that's not okay, but with just a shove, there's so many hard surfaces and closed spaces that there could be serious injury. I met a client who was shoved and hit her head on the counter and was actually in a coma for 3 months. So that's why we say to stay away from kitchens and baths. Also, stay in rooms that have exits to the outside to make sure that you don't get stuck, like in a second floor, if possible, or stuck in a room where you're not able to get outside so that you can flee. We also want to make sure, we always tell adults that to make sure to have conversations with their children. A lot of people say, well, my children don't know what's going on. And we always say, yes, they do. I don't care if you think that they don't, they do. Even if they don't know the specifics, they know that something bad happened. So reassuring the children it's not their job to intervene, that it's their job to stay safe and to have a specific plan for your kids to, get your younger brother, go out your window, go to Miss Smith's house next door and stay there until I do, or call grandma or whatever. To just have that conversation with them so that they know that it's their job to stay safe. It's not their job to protect mom. If a person is leaving, we recommend that they go ahead and start to get important documents, some things that you absolutely need when you leave. We see this all the time in shelter. A large part of our client financial assistance goes to getting new Social Security cards, new birth certificates, new identification, particularly for the children, because you have to have that to get them in a new school, to get any kind of financial aid, anything like that. So if you know that you're going to leave, to start thinking about a safe time to leave. Sometimes it's not the safest to pick up and leave in the moment. Sometimes when you know that something's coming up, maybe they have a business trip, maybe they're going, to be out of town on a weekend with their guy friends, then that might be a safer time to leave. But to start to prepare those things, to document any injuries that happen or any evidence of any kind of altercations, because that's going to help in successful prosecution later. And then, of course, to reach out to support people, whether that's your church, whether that's something like Safe Harbor, any place that's going to give you the support that you need to have that confidence and to have that ability to go to a safe place. And we always say, yes, we have a safe, confidential shelter, and if you can get there, great. But there are so many people. I've had so many clients that come to counseling, and it was people in their churches that provided them a safe haven. So the connection and the ability to provide that is important. Safety planning doesn't mean that you have to go to your shelter and you have to do X, Y, and Z. It just means that you start to think about your safety in every walk of life. When I'm at school, when I'm at work, when I'm at church, are there people that I can talk to at church who would help me in a pinch? And so, again, just so thankful that you guys are doing this.
We definitely want to thank our panel. I want to end with this and then we're going to let our pastor come up. Today I got flowers, and it wasn't my anniversary. It wasn't any special occasion. It seemed like a nightmare, and I couldn't believe it was real. I woke up this morning, and the bruises was all over me. I got flowers today, and it wasn't Mother's Day or any other special day. Last night he beat me up again, and it wasn't much worse than any other time. Last night I decided I was going to leave him. What will I do? What about money? What about my friends? What about my family? I'm afraid of him, and I'm scared to leave. But I know he must be sorry because he sent me flowers today. I got flowers today. Today was a very special, and it was the day of my funeral. Last night he finally killed me. He beat me to death. If only I had gathered up enough courage and enough strength to leave him, I would not have gotten these flowers today. I want to just give our panel a round of applause for being here. I know this is a touchy subject, but I think it's something that we all need to be informed about because it can happen to our coworkers, our friends, any of our family members, and we just want to share. And I want to thank our pastor for letting us give him a round of applause for letting us do this too. So Pastor Bottom, thank you so much for having us to do this and just to give some information. The panel will be here at the end, and they will be out front. If you have any questions that you want to ask them individually, you can do that. And so I'm not